Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now to the little poem, The Dying Veteran. This is poem 44 of the 58 of Sands at 70. And it is true, we are back in some ways to the drum tap poems. We have said in earlier lectures that we talk about Whitman and the 5 Ps. There's another P. We've mentioned a number that we've not named in originally our 5 Ps. And one of them, you could make the argument, is Whitman as psychologist. And there is a profound, I think, observation of Whitman's Leaves of Grass that Whitman might have understood human psychology better than almost any other writer that you will stumble onto. Now, there is going to be a little note that will be attended to this one right underneath the title, A Long Island Incident, Early Part of the Present Century. So we're going to get a kind of a framing there. Now, our assumptions that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net down the left-hand side, Talks with Walt, our playlist, and that you were a part of that introductory set of comments for Sands at 70, and then we just finished with Past Forgetting. Now, our Nortons will tell us that this poem was first published in McClure's magazine. Notice all these different magazines are all of a sudden Whitman at the end of his life was being published in. This one is from June 1887. Whitman did tell William Sloane Kennedy, in Reminiscence of Walt Whitman, that he received $25 for it, although Whitman said about this poem far more than it is worth, that is to say, the $25. Now, I find this poem a remarkable one, in that the storytelling approach is kind of cool. It's almost like onion layering, parfait for the Shrek fans in the house. But you've got Whitman writing a poem about when he was a young man, about what a veteran had to say right as he was dying, about wars that he had been in way back during the period of the Revolution, the Revolutionary War. But you'll probably remember that the term veteran, not used very often in Leaves of Grass, was first used in Centenarian Story. And then we're going to get to this dying here in a little bit. This will be last words kind of thing, if you will. Amid these days of order, ease, prosperity, notice the 3, in other words, the modern condition. Amid the current, that is to say modern, songs of beauty, peace, decorum, again, notice your 3s. I cast a reminiscence. Reminiscence is used 16 times in Leaves of Grass, and so here we go. He's going to play this game. Notice, in parenthetics, likely 'twill offend you. Now, who is the you that he's talking to? The modern reader, maybe we would say. I heard it in my boyhood, taking us obviously back to there was a child went forth, right? More than a generation since, he says, so it's been a long time. A queer old savage man, I love his use of the word savage. A fighter under Washington himself. We've commented on Whitman's love of Washington, and so here we go. This goes back obviously to the time of the Revolution. And then he'll say it about the guy in parenthetics, large, brave, cleanly. We've heard all of these kind of adjectives about Whitman's ideal guy, right? Ideal person. Hot-blooded, no talker. That's interesting given that our collection here is called Talks with Walt, right? No talker, rather spiritualistic, had fought in the ranks, notice the dash, fought well, had been all through the Revolutionary War, in parenthetics. Now, back to this guy. He's lay dying. Notice the dash. Sons, daughters, church deacons, lovingly tending him, sharpening their sense. That's the only time sharpening gets used in Leaves of Grass. Their ears towards his murmuring, half-caught words. You remember in Valediction Forbidding Morning Dunn's poem, as virtuous men pass mildly away and whisper to the souls to go, while some of their sad friends do say, the breath goes now, and some say no. In other words, they're kind of leaning in, hoping that maybe that the end of his time passed. You kind of got that same imagery here, and the half-caught words now will be the rest of the poem. In other words, right before he dies, this great warrior of the Revolutionary period will speak this way, quote, let me return again to my war days. Now, to gets used 7 times here. In other words, what I want to go back to my war days. Now, this always has been an interesting observation that Whitman is making here about those engaged in military contest in the theater of war. There are many that will come back from that experience and they want to talk nothing about it. They want to have no referencing to it whatsoever, and they will say there's no way they would ever want to go through the experience again. Interestingly, though, there are others who will come back and they will admit, I kind of miss that experience. The civilian life has become lesser than, become boring for me, and I would much rather prefer to return back to the situation, especially because my pals are there. We're going to get an interesting observation here that will sound a whole lot like the second of those. Let me return again to my war days, to the sights and scenes, to forming the line of battle, to the scouts ahead, reconnoitering, to the cannons, the grim artillery. You'll remember the use of the word grim and "Oh Captain, my Captain." Of course, we know this is all referenced in drum taps poems. To the galloping aides carrying orders, to the wounded, obviously think of wound dresser, the fallen, the heat, the suspense. In other words, normal life maybe for this veteran became really boring. And then he finishes with a strange construction, the perfume, strong. You remember perfume gets used in cabin ships at sea, but the perfume is obviously the smoke and the smells of war. The smoke, the deafening noise, we obviously know about that from our study of drum taps. Away with your life of peace, exclamation point. Notice the dash. Your joys of peace, exclamation point. Give me my old, wild battle life again. End quote. Now, there's obviously two ways to read this poem. One is Whitman is celebrating an old veteran that's still got that fighting spirit as he is leaving. There's a second reading of this that says maybe in his old age, Whitman identifies with the veteran that he saw in his young age, but now as a poet who is aging, as a warrior poet who is aging, Whitman would love to go back to a time maybe a little more exciting, maybe a little bit more, chaotic and yet exciting for him, as opposed to what now he is slipping into in this Sands at 70 collection or cluster. I think a 2A, though, our possible message here is that soldiers and vets often will struggle with returning to the normal life. Obviously, we today take very seriously the idea of post-traumatic stress, obviously mental health concerns and the like. None of that was really even spoken of in Whitman's time. Notice he says, this might offend you. He's obviously speaking to readers who would not believe that someone who's gone through those horrific experiences would actually call it perfume and want to go back to it. At 2B, notice again the onion-like layering of the storytelling motif. I find that fascinating. It's like at least 3 or 4 levels deep. And obviously the implications for Whitman are there as well at 3B. At 3A, I love to put this poem with Crane's Red Badge of Courage, the 1895 offering. Also, Radke's All Quiet on the Western Front, the 1929 offering. To read those two titles as it relates to this poem, I think is valuable. Finally, at 3B, do you have a veteran in your life that you can thank, as we have commented on the importance of reading Leaves of Grass, to develop a certain kind of informed patriotic spirit? And finally, do you think Leaves of Grass helps you to understand soldiers and veterans better, especially after our study of drum taps and then to pick up a poem like this? I hope that that's the case. Thank you.